I was left at the altar for being too fat, until a plus-size cowboy changed everything for me. I will never forget the day everything fell apart. The church was packed, flowers bloomed in vibrant colors, the air thick with anticipation. My heart pounded with excitement, every beat echoing hope. But then, he didn't show. I stood there, a wedding dress worth thousands, feeling the fabric suffocate me more than ever. The murmurs began, whispers swirling like a storm around me. Too fat, they said. She always was too much. Brian, the love of my life, was supposed to be my forever. But he left me with nothing but embarrassment. My hands trembled as I wiped away tears, hot streaks on my cheeks that felt like 1,000 sharpened swords. Friends glanced away, and my mother's disappointed gaze pierced through me like ice. I was alone, lost in the chaos of shattered dreams. Weeks passed like shadows, haunting me. I spent nights questioning everything. My friends rallied around, fear creeping into their whispers. Was I really too much? But then, as if the universe decided I needed a cosmic twist, I met Jake. He was big, not just in stature, but in kindness. A true plus-size cowboy, with a heart that seemingly held the weight of the world. I stumbled into him one rainy afternoon, an escape from my sorrow, wrapped in oversized sweatpants and a baggy hoodie. There he was, laughing with the barista, his smile brightening the dim cafe. At first glance, he looked like a fantasy come to life, rugged, wild, unrefined. He saw me, really saw me. My heart dared to beat differently. My skeletal fear settled in a fragile hope. But as we chatted, I felt the fear creeping back. Would he leave too? The echoes of the altar haunted me, a reminder of betrayal. Jake leaned in, his voice a low rumble, full of warmth, but I was lost in my thoughts, wrestling with insecurities. Why would someone like him want someone like me? Then, just as our connection deepened, Jake took my hand. I braced myself for the turn, that moment when reality would drop like a hammer. My breath caught in my throat. Would he say what I dreaded? Instead, he whispered something surprising, something that left me breathless with questions hanging in the air. Hey, before we continue with this amazing story, I need to give you an important heads up. Many subscribers have reported that YouTube unsubscribed them without warning. Take a quick second to check the red button below to make sure you're still subscribed to the channel. I'd hate for you to miss any of the exclusive content coming soon. And while you're there, smash that like button, it really helps me out with the algorithm. Oh, and tell me in the comments, which city are you watching from? I love getting to know every amazing person who's part of this community. Your participation makes all the difference. Let's connect. When Jake took my hand, the warmth radiated a kind of comfort I hadn't known in a long time, yet a part of me still hesitated. His eyes, sincere and inviting, held a promise of understanding, but the walls I had built were tall and thick. I could hear the whispers again, the echoes of rejection swirling in my mind, making me shudder. What if I took this leap only to face another fall? What is it? He asked, a teasing lilt in his voice, a smile dancing on his lips. You're looking at me like I just buttered my toast with gold. That I chuckled, but the tension in my chest remained. I don't want to mislead you. I'm not what you think I am. What do you think I think you are? His tone turned serious, his thumb grazing the back of my hand. Because from where I'm standing, you're someone worth getting to know. Someone beautiful and real. The kind of person I want to be around. His words washed over me like a balm, soothing the jagged edges. For the first time, I didn't feel the need to put on a facade. I wanted to be honest, yet fear gripped me tighter. The facade of confidence I had crafted felt shimmery and thin. Jake, The words tangled in my throat. Instead, I withdrew my hand slightly, unsure of how much of myself to offer. I was left at my own wedding. What if you decide I'm too much too? Like he did, his expression shifted, sympathy flickering in those deep eyes. Sorry you went through that. But listen, just because someone else did something foolish doesn't mean I will. I'm not him. No, he wasn't. I would have to remind myself of that. Still, I could feel doubt lurking in my peripheral vision, threatening to creep back into my heart. How could I move forward without constantly looking over my shoulder, scared of falling again? Yet, Jake was persistent, a gentle force pushing against my fears. Let's take it slow. How about a picnic this weekend? Just you and me, away from all this noise. No pressure. I contemplated his offer, feeling the tiniest spark of hope igniting inside me. A picnic? Yeah, Jake smiled, clearly enjoying the idea. We can pack some sandwiches or grab takeout. My cousin has a ranch. It's peaceful out there. Just the wide open sky and a couple of stars, no judgment. I wanted to say yes. I wanted to feel that joy flutter in my chest without the burden of past scars weighing me down. Before I could respond, his phone buzzed in his pocket, interrupting our moment. He glanced at it, and I could see his demeanor change instantly. The light in his eyes dimmed ever so slightly, the weight of an unseen burden creeping back into his face. I am sorry, he said, the smile faltering, I have to take this. With that, he stepped aside, leaving me to watch his figure as he turned away, an abyss of uncertainty forming in my stomach. The call was brief, but the expression etched on his face remained. When he returned, the air around us felt heavy, as if unspoken words were swirling between us. Everything okay? I asked, trying to mask my own concern. Just family stuff, he replied, attempting to shrug it off, but I sensed the subtle crack in his facade. Nothing to worry about. We ended our conversation that day with tentative plans for the weekend, but the joy I once felt was now threaded with uncertainty. What was weighing on him? I couldn't help but feel that if I couldn't even delve into my past, how could I really help him with his? As we parted ways, I noticed my heart raced with an amalgamation of hope and anxiety. I knew I was on the precipice of something that could either heal my shattered self-esteem or cast me further into despair. Later that night, unable to shake the unease, I found myself scrolling through social media, desperately seeking something to distract me. That was when I stumbled upon a post that sent chills down my spine. Brian. There he was, grinning in a snapshot, standing next to a woman slim, wearing a wedding dress that mirrored mine. The post was captioned, "Excited to say I do soon." The knife of betrayal twisted deeper, and in that moment, as tears streamed down my face, I felt the world closing in around me once more. I had thought I was starting to heal, but now I was right back where I started, engulfed by doubt and heartbreak. Suddenly, there was a knock at my door. With trembling hands, I opened it to find Jake, his expression unreadable. "I got your message," he said quietly, his gaze piercing through the fog of my despair. "I have something to tell you." Jake's presence felt like an anchor in the storm that raged within me, yet the weight of his sudden appearance made my heart race even faster. I stood in the doorway, a nightgown clinging to my form, wild strands of hair framing my tear-streaked face. His eyes searched mine, and in that moment, I could see the storm gathering behind his brow, mirroring my own turmoil. "What is it?" I asked, though I wasn't sure I wanted to know. He stepped inside, his expression a mixture of resolve and uncertainty. "I didn't want to wait until the picnic," he began, lowering his voice as if sharing a secret meant for only us. "I know I should have called first, but I saw your post." My heart plunged deeper into my stomach. "You saw, what post?" "The one about him." He moved closer, his proximity both a comfort and a shadow looming over my unresolved pain. "I just wanted to check in on you." I can't imagine how that feels. I wanted to tell him that it felt like drowning all over again, that each breath I took was heavy with the realization of betrayal. Instead, I offered a weak nod, my defenses down as the vulnerability seeped through. "Can I sit?" he asked. The question was one of respect, a small kindness that made me realize how rare that was in my world. I stepped aside, allowing him to take a seat at the small dining table cluttered with remnants of my day. The uneaten dinner lay cold on a plate, and the light from the kitchen dimly illuminated the egg hanging between us. "What else?" I ventured, my voice trembling as fear coiled around my heart. I tried to reach you, but when I saw the post, I felt like I had to come. Look, I understand if you need space. But you're not alone in this, I want to help. His gaze was steady, the sincerity in his tone pulling at the spider web of defenses I had spent months weaving. Fighting the urge to look away, I matched his gaze with all the courage I could muster. And what if I'm not enough? What if I'm just too much? The words stumbled out, raw and unrefined. What if I can't shake this feeling that I'm not worth fighting for? Jake leaned forward, elbows resting on the table, his brow furrowed with concern. You are worth it, he insisted. More than you know. It's that jerk's loss, not yours. Losing you is a mistake he'll always regret. A small ember of hope flickered despite the ache in my heart, and I found it overwhelming to let it rise. But you don't know me. You don't know everything I've done or who I am. I know you've been hurt, he replied, his voice dropping to a whisper. But I also know there's light in you, and I can see it fighting to break free. The wind outside whistled against the window, the world outside echoing the chaos of my heart. I breathed deeply, considering his words, the possibility that someone could want me for who I was, flaws and all. Just then, the vulnerability of the moment was punctured by my phone buzzing on the table, breaking the fragile connection we were forging. I hesitated, feeling the cruel pull of the outside world threatening to slap reality back into my face. It was a message from my best friend, urging me to talk. Panic fluttered within me, tearing me away from the hope Jake had begun to kindle. I need to answer this, I muttered, fumbling for the device, looking down at the screen, dread creeping upon me. Maybe it can wait? Jake urged softly, but I shook my head, my fingers already tapping to respond, but as I glanced at the screen, my breath caught. A group message, a flood of texts from friends asking how I was doing following the post. They meant well, but their love only dug the knife deeper, each ping reinforcing the echo in my mind that I was somehow less than before. Then, my phone dinged again. The message was from Brian. I hate to see you hurt. Let's meet for coffee to talk, and in that moment, I felt the ground shift beneath me. Here was the man who'd once shattered my soul now reaching out with a facade of concern. A part of me screamed to burn the bridge, to slam the door shut on that chapter for good. But another one desperate to understand, to find closure whispered temptingly. Within, are you okay? Jake's voice was laced with concern, pulling me back from the brink of my thoughts. His eyes searched mine, and I was struck with the realization that I needed to choose. Choose whether to answer that message, to face the part of my past that threatened to swallow me whole again, or to lean on the glimmer of hope Jake had offered, even if it was just a flicker amidst the shadows. Before I could respond, the decision loomed like a shadow ready to swallow me whole. I don't know, I whispered, feeling the pull of uncertainty closing in again, blood and doubt clawing at my heart, and as Jake reached across the table, his fingers brushing against mine, I was torn between letting the light in or retreating back into the darkness. The warmth of Jake's touch sent a shiver up my spine, grounding me momentarily in the present, yet the past loomed larger than ever. My heart raced, trapped between two worlds, a decision that felt like the weight of 1,000 hearts. I retreated, pulling my hand away, fingers grazing the table as if the wood could shield me from the upheaval inside. That I can't, I whispered, the words barely escaping my lips. The heaviness in my chest threatened to crush me, memories of Brian's casual cruelty flooding back, reminding me of the illusions I had clung to for far too long. Please, just take a moment, Jake urged gently, concern wrinkling his brow. What is Hughat does he mean to you at this point? He was everything, I admitted, the confession tasting bitter. And now he's just a reminder of everything I've lost, of how I was never good enough. The room felt suffocatingly small, closing in as I leaned toward the window, gazing into the swirling darkness outside, the wind howling a haunting tune. The lights of the neighborhood flickered like stars obscured by clouds, blurring into the abyss. In that moment, the two options weighed against my soul, a tether to a past that knew pain or a leap into the unknown that whispered of hope. Change doesn't happen overnight, Jake said softly, pulling me back from the depths. You don't have to know what comes next. Just be where you are right now. I turned back to him, his gaze steady and warm, imbuing me with courage. He reached for my hand again, this time gripping it firmly, as if my wavering spirit needed anchoring. How could this man, who barely knew my soul's deepest wounds, be offering me such kindness? But my phone buzzed once more, a relentless reminder of the life outside these four walls. I glanced down at it again, dread pooling at the pit of my stomach. What do I say? I curiously asked, daggers of anxiety spearing through my heart. What do I even want from him anymore? Maybe it's not what you want from him, but what you want for yourself, Jake offered, his finger tracing small circles on the table beside my hand, a calming gesture that soothed my frayed edges that I swallowed hard, feeling the tremor of uncertainty. My heart thudded louder, each beat a reminder of past heartbreaks. Don't you ever get scared? I breathed, fear clogging my throat. What if I open that door and find more hurt? Then we'll face it together, he declared, the unwavering conviction in his voice igniting a small flame in the icy cavern I had built around my heart. What I see is someone who's been through hell and back and still stands. You don't give yourself enough credit. Tears prickled at the corners of my eyes, the empathy radiating off him stirring something buried deep. I thumbed my phone hesitantly, staring at Brian's message. As I did, the temptation to respond gnawed at my resolve like a thief in the night. But just as I was about to type, the world shifted unexpectedly. The door swung open behind me with an abruptness that rattled my nerves. My mother stood there, her eyes wide, panicking at the sight of me at the table with a man Jake, her instincts probably already alerting her to an unfamiliar dynamic. Sweetheart, I've been trying to reach you. Why didn't you pick up? Her voice dripped with anxiety, eyes darting between Jake and me as if we were both trespassing on ground not meant for outsiders. Mom, it's okay, I breathed, though fear clawed at my throat. This wasn't how I wanted our moment to unfold. Jake's presence, once a source of comfort, now seemed to bring an uncomfortable spotlight to my vulnerability. Is everything all right here? Are you talking to him? She raised an eyebrow, fighting the impulse to shout my life decisions back into the chaos of her worries. I felt like a puppet caught between two masters, tethered to my past yet struggling for future autonomy. Yes, I'm fine. I trailed off, darting a glance at Jake. How could I explain this moment to her without it feeling like a betrayal? Before I could even compose my thoughts, Jake stood, catching my gaze one last to me, a silent message passing between us that cried, "I'm still here," before he turned to face my mother. "Ma'am, I'm just checking in on her. She's been through a lot lately." The way he looked at her felt like unexpected courage, some kind of solidarity he hoped to build on my behalf, but instinctively, I wanted to shield him from any judgment she might harbor. "Jake," I started, feeling the panic rise again in my chest, but my mother's gaze sharpened like the flick of a knife. With no preamble, her voice rose above the tension, a wave crashing upon my inner fortress. "What are your intentions with my daughter?" It was as if the walls fell away, exposing all my fears in one dreaded question. Would I ever be free to choose my own path without the shadow of judgment? The uncertainty clawed deeply at my heart, drowning out everything else as I felt myself wavering in that in-between place of light and dark. Jake stood still, unwavering. My heart raced, not just for myself but for the fate of whatever bond was beginning to blossom with him, now hanging precariously on a question neither of us knew how to answer. The tension hovered in the air as my heart thudded painfully against my ribcage. The boldness of my mother's question hung like a guillotine waiting to fall. I could feel fear unfurling inside my chest, squeezing tighter with every heartbeat, yet I was drawn to the way Jake held his ground, shoulders squared and expression steady in the face of my mother's scrutiny. He seemed like a lighthouse amidst the turbulent sea of my emotions. "I want to make sure she's doing okay," Jake replied, his tone calm yet resolute. "We're just talking about life, about what she wants for herself." "Talking? Is that what you call it?" My mother stepped closer, as if trying to convey the seriousness of her protective instincts through sheer proximity. "She doesn't need distractions, she needs honesty and clarity." I felt the ground beneath me shifting along with her words. A part of me wanted to scream that I was tired of being her perpetual project, her assignment, a puzzle she was intent on fixing. But a larger part quaked in fear of her disappointment. Her disapproval had always stung like a wound that refused to heal. "Mom," I began hesitantly, searching for the right words to carve out space for both my choices and feelings, "this is about me. Not you, or him, or anyone else. It's my journey." Jake's presence felt like a shield, a tangible reminder that I didn't deserve to carry the weight of others' expectations. With a gentle squeeze of my hand, he encouraged me without saying a word. Still, my mother's fierce gaze ricocheted back to him, a defensive stance ready to protect her daughter at all costs. "Do you think you're good enough for her?" she pressed, and my heart sank lower. "Good enough?" he echoed, tilting his head slightly, a furrow creasing his brow. "It's not about being good enough for anyone. It's about helping her see that she is always enough just as she is." I felt tears prick at the corners of my eyes as his unwavering belief in me shattered the chains of doubt binding my heart. Yet my mother was still there, her unrelenting eyes cutting through, demanding an answer, holding both of us in an expectant silence. Suddenly, a loud crack echoed from outside, shaking the window panes and sending a cascade of dry leaves skittering across the pavement below. Instinctively, I flinched, the storm outside mirroring the turmoil inside. And as if summoned by the chaos, a familiar face appeared at the door. "Brian," my past, draped in an unwelcome aura that wrapped around me like a shroud. "Is this a bad time?" he asked, and even the simplicity of his words sent me spiraling, the contrast between my present and the ghost of my past striking like lightning. Jake's hand tightened around mine, grounding me in the present and keeping me anchored amidst the aftershock of my tumultuous world. My mother's alarmed expression shifted to shock as she turned to Brian, and I could almost hear the gears in her head spinning, trying to process the mess unfolding before her. "I came to check on you," he continued, his voice casual, yet there was an intensity behind his eyes that felt unnerving. "I didn't mean to intrude. Maybe you should leave," I managed to say, feeling my voice tremble as the waves of insecurity crashed back. I didn't want him here, back in my story, not when everything was so fragile, and I had just begun to carve out a new narrative. "Wait." Brian stepped forward like he knew exactly how to defuse the situation, projecting charming innocence like a shield. "We need to talk about everything. This isn't over. It is over," I declared, the tremor in my voice turning into a fierce determination. "You've already made your choice, now it's my turn to make mine. I don't want you back in my life." As I locked eyes with Jake, I could see the encouragement linger in his expression, but a tinge of anxiety flickered across his face. I wondered if he felt the precariousness of this moment as acutely as I did. The air thickened around us, each breath a desperate fight against the tide of my tangled emotions. "Oh really? Is that what you want?" Brian challenged, his voice dipping into a mocking tone. That jabbed at the pain I had buried. "You think you can just replace me, decide you deserve better when all I did was care? Everyone else saw you for what you are. I was the only one who didn't turn away." The venom of his words wriggled under my skin like a poison, igniting every insecurity I had wrestled with, every moment he had suggested I wasn't enough. It was a searing reminder that my scars were still fresh, still exposed. My vision blurred as tears threatened to spill, a rush of vulnerability crashing over me like a wave. "Stop it!" I commanded, but my voice barely masked the tremor of fear within. I felt the ground shifting beneath me, the balance I sought threatened by the weight of my tumultuous past. Before I could gather my bearings, Jake stepped forward, his presence unwavering like a wall against a storm. "You don't get to speak to her like that," he said firmly, his voice low but fierce. "You've hurt her enough. It's time you let her go." For a heartbeat, Brian's eyes flickered, surprise edging in. Then he regained his composure, featuring the trademark smirk that had once charmed, now repulsed. "And who are you? Just a temporary fix? Can't you see you're nothing but a pawn in this?" "Enough!" My mother burst in, her authority piercing through the tension like breaking glass. "This is my daughter's life. She doesn't need your toxicity hanging over her." As Brian's expression darkened, that familiar tightening grip of anxiety wrapped around me tighter than ever. I found myself longing for freedom, yet ensnared in a web of doubt. I could see the storm clouds brewing on the horizon, both inside and outside, and I feared what awaited me in those dark shadows. Jake turned to me, his expression softening for a moment, but behind it was concern that I could only address in the ethos of silence. "What do you want?" he murmured, uncertainty creeping back into his words. It felt impossible to articulate my desires among the rising chaos. My mind raced in circles, searching for solidity amidst the tempest. Then, just as clarity began to flicker like a candle caught in a rough wind, Brian's phone buzzed on the table, the message slip mirroring my own chaos. He glanced down, a brief flicker of confusion crossing his face, before he turned to me with an ominous glint. "That they're coming for you," he said, every word a dagger and a shield, punctuating the chaos he had just invoked. And with his words, as the storm outside thundered, I felt the waves of despair swallow me whole, leaving only the echoes of choices unmade and crossroads that stood without a clear path ahead. The weight of impending conflict and the once faint heartbeat of hope overtook my being. I stood at the precipice, grasping for the light but feeling the dark pull me down as the cliff disappeared before my very eyes. The walls of my heart felt like they were closing in on me, suffocating under the weight of Brian's accusatory words combined with the changing tide of my emotional landscape. "They're coming for you." The phrase echoed ominously in my mind, a shadow creeping closer in a world that already felt too small. "Who is?" I managed to choke out, the question hanging in the air, thick with fear and confusion. The very space around us seemed to tremble, charged with a growing anxiety that gripped my heart and twisted knots in my stomach. But Brian just smiled, an unsettling smirk that felt like a knife slice, dull yet incisive. "You think I'm the only one keeping track of you? I know people, dear, and they don't forget easily." The air went cold, I felt lost in a wind-lashed landscape, flailing against an uncertainty that frothed and churned. "Stop it," Jake commanded again, but I could see he was fighting a losing battle against the tide of my past. His determination was a beacon, yet here in this charged moment, it felt overwhelmed by the shadows creeping in from the memories I was desperate to escape. My mother reached out, placing a protective hand on my shoulder. "You're stronger than this," she murmured, and I latched onto her words like lifebuoys in a tumultuous sea. But my eyes were drawn back to Brian, energy thrumming around him like a storm, shaping my reality in ways I couldn't quite swallow. In that moment, I felt utterly betrayed. This was more than just an argument, it was a rupture in the very fabric of who I was trying to become. I had fought to see my worth beyond the weight I carried, beyond the deceptive reflection in the mirror that Brian had pressed against me for years. "Get out," I said, my voice finally finding a note of power beneath the tremor. "I won't let you drag me back down with you." The words were achingly difficult to pull from the depths of fear, but I stood there, trembling yet resolute. Jake's hand tightened around mine, a lifeline amidst the storm, and I drew courage from his presence. At that moment, Brian's expression darkened like a summer sky before a thunderstorm. "One day, you'll see. You think you can escape me? No one just walks away." My heart raced, but I turned from him, unable to bear the weight of his presence any longer. "This isn't your fight," I whispered, just loud enough for Jake to hear. But Brian took a step closer, the air heavy with unspoken threats. "You're still the same scared girl I left. You think you're making a choice, but you're really just running. One day the reality will hit." Somewhere in the back of my mind, I knew he was right about one thing: I was running, clinging tightly to the hope of a different life. But wasn't that the risk? Each step I took was a bid to reclaim my narrative, even as the shadows lingered and whispered doubts into my heart. "We need to go," Jake said firmly, his voice steadying my heart and pushing me forward. "Now." The urgency of his tone snapped me back into the moment, and I nodded, trying to step away from the wreckage of my previous life. With a quick, determined stride, I moved towards the door, ready to escape the fierce gale of turmoil that had subsumed my heart, but as we passed Brian, he drew in a shaky breath, a moment of vulnerability piercing through his stoic mask. "You think it's simple? You don't know what's at stake." The weight of his words hung heavily in the air, an uninvited truth that surged through my veins. I glanced back, daring to meet his gaze. "You know nothing about what it means to love someone unconditionally. You never did." With that, I pushed past him, feeling the sunlight break onto my skin, a sharp counter to the cold darkness Brian had tried to weave into my heart. Outside, the storm had begun to clear, but a sense of palpable tension hung in the air. Jake pulled me close, stealing a glance back towards the door I had just exited, the shadows of shattering trust resting on his brow. "Are you okay?" he asked softly, a question layered with layers of concern and weariness. I nodded, though uncertainty still flowed like a river in my chest. "I think I can be," I responded, though I meant the reverse quite as much. Somewhere deep within, hope flickered, yearning for nourishment amidst the shadows still looming over my heart. As we walked along the path, a small white envelope caught my eye, fluttering against the wind like a wounded bird. Curious, I paused and picked it up, tension twining itself around my heart once Maureen unwelcome but unavoidable reminder of the rocky road we were traveling down that I opened it, my hands trembling, revealing neatly written words that sent chills racing down my spine. "They'll never stop coming for you," it read ominously, signed only with the initial M. Every instinct in me electrified, my heart began to pound with the sound of alarm bells, signaling that there was more at play than I realized, and it felt like I had stepped from the storm of one battle into a far larger war yet to be fought. I turned to Jake, a whirlwind of emotions crashing through me. "We have to get out of here now." The light of hope warred with the darkness, me heart pounding, caught between dread and resolve. The question that loomed was not just about pieces of my past but was also about a future I wasn't sure I had the strength to embrace. The storm was far from over, and as I grasped Jake's hand tighter, I realized that this journey was only just beginning. The suffocating weight of the envelope slipped from my fingers as I stumbled backward, the world around me blurring into a dizzying haze. The words danced ominously in my mind, "They'll never stop coming for you." I grasped Jake's hand tightly, his warmth grounding me even as I felt suspended in fear. "Who is M?" I managed to whisper, my voice trembling as my thoughts spiraled. The last vestiges of calm fled, replaced by an avalanche of questions and dread. "What does this mean, Jake?" He frowned, his brow furrowing deeper than I'd seen before. "I don't know, but we can't just stand here. We need to put some distance between us and whatever that is." His voice was steady but edged with urgency, as if he could sense the adrenaline beginning to swell in my veins. That I nodded, forcing myself to move, to walk, to escape the grip of that reality. But each step felt heavy, as if I were trudging through mud while a ghost of my past taunted me from the shadows. The reassuring sounds of the outside world mingled with the whispers from within, a cacophony of internal battles I struggled to silence. Jake led me down a path lined with wildflowers, vibrantly colored against the soft backdrop of trees and grass. I half wondered if everything around us was simply a mirage in the haze of my panicked mind. "Let's go to my place," he suggested after we walked a few moments in silence. "We can figure this out there." He didn't need to say it, I could feel the urgency in his voice, the necessity for a safe harbor, a place where we could strategize our next steps. Something about the familiarity of his home wrapped me in a fragile cocoon of comfort, easing the sharp edges of my anxiety, if only slightly. As we approached his house, I couldn't help but feel a flutter of warmth at the thought of the comfort his presence brought me. But just as I took a breath to regain my composure, the memory of Brian's warning surfaced, vicious and biting. "You think you can escape? No one walks away." When we stepped inside, the world outside faded, but the fear still clung to me like a shadow. "Want some tea?" Jake asked as he moved to the kitchen, his tone light, but the weight of unspoken tension lingered between us like a storm cloud. I nodded absently, watching him move with purpose as he dug out a kettle and some mismatched mugs from the cabinets. "Maybe I should call someone?" I thought aloud, grasping onto my phone like it could somehow shield me from the truth. I looked over to see Jake, his back to me as he poured water into the kettle. "Someone who can help, maybe, but I think we need to slow down first," he said, his voice merging with the bubbling of the kettle as it began to heat. We can't let fear dictate our next move. Whatever's going on, we need to think it through. He turned then, his expression softening as our eyes met. There was understanding there, a gentleness that shoved aside the sharpness of recent events. You're not alone in this, he reassured me, and somehow, I believed him. I took a deep breath, feeling the rhythm of my heart ease just the slightest bit. Thank you for being here, I replied, the honesty spilling out with a weight I hadn't realized I carried. The kettle whistled sharply. I jumped slightly, the sound jarring me from my thoughts. Jake moved to pour the steaming water over the tea bags, and as I watched the amber liquid swirl, I could feel the warmth beginning to seep into the corners of my heart, a small glow against the backdrop of fear creeping back. Moments later, we sat across from each other at the small kitchen table, quiet except for the occasional clink of mugs and soft rustling of tea bags. As I took a sip, the warmth enveloped me, momentarily staving off the chill that had settled deep within. Let's talk about Brian, Jake finally said, pulling me back from the comfort of the tea. What's really going on? I hesitated, grappling with the desire to shield him from it all yet needing an outlet for the tumultuous storm within me. He's a part of my past I thought I could leave behind. I thought I was done with it. But now he's come back, and it's like everything is unraveling. Jake leaned in, his sincerity urging me to continue. Why does he have this power over you? What happened? With every word I spoke, I felt the weight of the tale unravel, breathing life into every secret and shadow that had coiled around my heart. I told him of the relationship that started with tenderness but descended into something darker, each moment filled with the hollow ache of conditional love. Brian had always had a way of twisting my self-worth, and despite how far I'd run, the echoes of his influence still reverberated through me. I thought I could rise above it, but sometimes it feels like I'm still that girl he shamed, still that scared girl. My voice trembled, summoning tears that threatened to spill over, and the familiar weight threatened to strangle me once more. That's not you anymore, Jake said firmly, and I could see a flicker of determination ignite in his eyes. You are not defined by him. You fought too hard to become the woman you are today. He reached across the table then, taking my hands in his warm, strong, a lifeline against the tide so I wouldn't feel the pull of the darkness. We will figure this out together. I promise. But just then, the gentle chime of my phone broke through the fragile moment, the sound slicing sharply into the air. Unsteadily, I pulled it from my pocket, my heart racing uncontrollably as I saw the name flash across the screen, Brian. Fear collided with determination, the gravity of the moment pressing down on us both, and as I gazed up at Jake, the uncertainty loomed larger than it had before. This time, we were standing on the edge of a precipice. As the phone rang, an electric jolt surged through me, every nerve ending sparking with a mixture of dread and defiance. I stared at Jake, and I could see the fear in his eyes mirroring my own. It felt like I was standing at a crossroads, the path behind me shrouded in shadows and the road ahead obscured by the storm brewing within. I can't answer that, I whispered, trying to latch onto the grounded reality of my surroundings, grasping at the walls of Jake's kitchen as if they could hold me steady against the swirling winds of my past. My hand trembled above the phone, heart pounding as the ringtone continued, echoing off the walls like a taunt. Don't, Jake said softly, but his tone was strong, imbued with a sense of urgency that washed over me like a protective barrier. You don't owe him anything, not even an explanation, but Brian's name pulsed on the screen, a dark rhythm that echoed in my heart. I felt the pull that insidious way had infiltrated my life, my thoughts. I had fought hard to escape, pushing past the suffocating bonds he had wrapped around me, but that name still echoed like a haunting refrain. With trembling fingers, I finally cut the call, the silence that followed heavy and thick, yet liberating. I took a moment to breathe, to realize that maybe I held the power to reshuffle the narrative, if only I could muster the courage. Your call, Jake said quietly, guiding my focus back to him as he slid his hand over mine. You don't have to fight alone. I'm here for you. But as I looked into his earnest eyes, I felt another wave of uncertainty wash over me. How could I let him in when the specter of Brian still loomed, casting long, dark shadows over every part of my life? I've spent so long running, I confessed, my voice trembling. Running from him, from the memories, from myself. How can I ask you to come with me into that light? What if it's too dark? What if it pulls us under? Jake studied me for a long moment, his expression regretful yet fierce, as though he understood the danger but was ready to face it anyway. No matter how dark it gets, it'll be your light. We can't let the past dictate our future. You need to see that you're stronger than you think, but the weight of my choices pressed down heavily as I thought of Brian's voice's twisted affection, the subtle barbs that would slice through my self-worth like a knife. I had envisioned a life free from those chains, but perhaps they had only morphed into new ones, distractions crafted of fear and uncertainty. That I want to believe that, I said, breaking the tenuous silence. But what if he comes for me? Jake, what if he tries to manipulate me again? Then we'll be ready. He squeezed my hand, a fervent commitment igniting a flicker of hope within me. Well, find a way to fight him together. You deserve that chance. Just as the warmth of his words began to settle like a bomb over my racing heart, the phone buzzed once more. An incoming text message that vibrated insistently against the table. I glanced down to see another message from Brian. I'm not finished with you yet. You can't run away forever. A shiver crept down my spine, the sheer audacity of his words sending my heartbeat racing once again. Fear shot through me, snaking its way into the corners of my heart where hope had begun to flourish. This isn't over, I whispered, dread-tinged seriousness pooling in my stomach as I raised my eyes to Jake, vulnerability etched on my features. The tidal wave was building, and I felt it thrumming through the air around us, ready to crash. This is only the beginning. Stay strong, Jake said, determination threading through his voice like steel. You've conquered so much already. Don't let him steal your light again. Just as he finished, the sky outside darkened, the clouds gathering ominously, mirroring the storm inside me. The kitchen, once a sanctuary, suddenly felt constricting, the air thick with impending turmoil. Then, my phone buzzed again, this time vibrating harder, relentless and unyielding. I could feel Jake's concern radiating towards me as I picked up the device, my heart caught in a precarious balance between fear and the embers of defiance sparking within. Perhaps it's time I take matters into my own hands, I breathed, a newfound resilience bubbling beneath the surface as I read the additional message. If you don't want to see me, they'll come to you. Just remember, you won't be alone. Each word pricked at the edges of my anxiety, echoing new possibilities and dangers alike. I glanced at Jake, whose eyes were filled with the same focus that ignited the warmth in my heart. We knew the battle wouldn't simply be external, it would require every bit of strength I'd cultivated over the years, and then I realized, even as the storm surged closer, I finally had someone by my side, offering me strength where I once felt none. But we were standing on the brink, the heavy implications of Brian's threat looming over us like the dark clouds above. That's when we fight back, I said, my voice steadying into resolve. And as the gathering storm ripped through the skies outside, I felt an unexpected flicker of hope light up within me, but just as that spark ignited, the power in the house flickered ominously, plunging us into darkness. I exchanged a worried glance with Jake, the weight of uncertainty still pressing heavily against my chest. The next moment, the sound of shattering glass filled the air, a harrowing reminder that the past may never fully release its grip, and we were about to confront the tempest head-on. The darkness engulfed the kitchen, leaving only a faint glimmer of light from the window, barely pushing past the thick shadows that had swept in. The sound of glass breaking shattered the brief comfort we'd constructed, and Jake's grip tightened on my hand. Stay close, he whispered, his voice a protective cocoon around us. Panic clawed at my throat, a familiar nemesis threatening to drown out the ember of hope I had just ignited. I felt like I was back in the suffocating grip of Brian's manipulation, that same loss of control loosening my grip on reality. As I instinctively stepped closer to Jake, I could feel the pulse of fear emanating between us.I and the fading light. Jake's features became sharp and defined, a beacon amid the encroaching void. It was just a window, he said, trying to calm me. But my heart raced at the thought of what was beyond our little sanctuary, unsure if the storm brewing outside was merely atmospheric or a prelude to a deeper threat. With shaky breaths, I stepped toward the shattered glass. I need to check it out, I said, surprising even myself with the determination in my tone. Are you sure? Jake asked, his eyes clouded with worry. It could be dangerous. That I can't just hide away, I insisted, the words erupting from a well of stubborn resolve. Brian won't let me live like that. I need to reclaim whatever power I have left, okay? Jake's acceptance felt like a lifeline. Just be careful, with trepidation clawing at me, I peeked around the corner of the kitchen into the darkened living room. The eerie silence was almost deafening, broken only by the faint dull thrum of distant thunder. As I moved, I picked up a broom handle, wielding it like a weapon in the face of the unknown. Just when I thought I might turn back, a figure slipped through the fractured glass doorway, silhouetted against the tumultuous backdrop of the storm. A breath caught in my throat, uncertainty swirling in confluence with the approaching tempest. But just as fear threatened to claim me, a glimmer of recognition sparked within the chaos. Mark? I breathed, the name spilling forth unbidden. My unexpected visitor was someone from my past, someone who had stood by me during a time of turbulence. The last time I saw him, he had been brimming with life, his cheerful swagger as bold as his plus-size figure, never apologizing for the space he took in this world. "Hey, I heard the commotion and thought I'd check on you," he said, stepping further inside. Relief flooded within me, tempered by confusion that we weren't expecting anyone, I stammered, glancing back towards Jake, who remained rooted in his position, watching the interaction with the shadow of doubt on his face. Surprise. Mark grinned, summoning an infectious warmth that momentarily melted the heaviness weighing on my chest. "I came to see if you were okay." "That storm looked rough out there." Jake's expression softened a fraction, uncertainty still etched prominently, but curiosity sparked in his eyes. Mark's presence felt like both a balm and an intrusion, an unavoidable reminder of all I had faced. "But really, you guys look like you were in the middle of something." His teasing counterpoint drew a smile from me despite the situation. "We were dealing with my past." "And Brian," I said, partially explaining, hoping not to dive too deep into emotional waters in front of Jake. The mention of Brian drew silence, confusion flashing across Mark's face, replaced by a resolute strength. "You know, I always told you to lean on me if things got tough," he said earnestly. "I'm not going to let you fight this alone." My heart swelled at his words, at the unexpected kindness that felt like a warm scarf wrapped around me in this cold, empty room. The battle I had waged alone for so long suddenly felt a touch less daunting. "That he has a way of weaving himself into everything, doesn't he?" Mark continued, his voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper. "He doesn't get to win, not this time." The support radiated like a beacon, but with it came my apprehension. Could I let both of them into the labyrinth of my fears? One foot in the light, and the other still tangled in the web of my past. As they exchanged glances, a delicate thread of connection formed, two men refusing to allow darkness to smear the colors of my future. Yet beneath the lightness, a flicker of dread ignited. It occurred to me that I now carried both friendship and expectations. Might they unravel if left unchecked? Then, as the storm outside whipped violently against the needling shadows, my phone vibrated yet again against the counter. It was another message from Brian, its foreboding allure impossible to ignore. It echoed against my inner turmoil, concise and chilling. "You think you can run from me? I know where you are." My heart plummeted, and I turned to see the gravity of the situation reflected in Jake's eyes, and I realized not just how vulnerable I was, but how closely we were all now intertwined in this escalating storm. Change was imminent, yet its direction remained uncertain. As the lights flickered erratically above us, I grasped the broom handle tighter, ready to face whatever turbulence awaited. I had allies now, but within me brewed the fear of losing them to a past I struggled to escape. I cast one last look into the faces of the men before me, own steadfast in one familiar, and braced for the chaos that was on the brink of shattering the fragile peace we had forged together. The room felt suffocating as I clutched the broom handle tightly in my hands, the shadows creeping ever closer while thunder rolled ominously outside. Mark's comforting presence was a soft glow in the dark, but Brian's chilling message had shattered the fragile sense of security I had begun to build. "I need to call the police," I blurted out, my heart racing as panic clawed at my throat. Jake's hand found my shoulder, grounding me with a firm positivity. "Let's not act out of fear," he said, his voice steady and reassuring. "First, We need to talk about how to take back control, Mark nodded, stepping closer, his supportive energy enveloping me like a warm embrace. I'm here for you. We can face this together. His presence offered a flicker of hope against the encroaching darkness, reminding me that I didn't have to navigate this storm alone. But the side of me that had spent years burying pain under layers of self-doubt trembled at the thought of confronting Brian. The last shred of power had always held still clawing at my heart. Why does he have such a hold over me? I murmured more to myself than to them, wondering aloud how someone could seep through the cracks of my newly rebuilt walls. You fought so hard to escape it, Jake said, his eyes searching mine, as though he could see the shadows lurking just beneath the surface. You have every right to be angry. Anger is a powerful fuel. Use it, but what if it leads me to hurt someone else? I questioned, fear intertwining with uncertainty. The experiences with Brian echoed in my mind, the way his anger had twisted our relationship, turning love into a weapon. What if this stirs up something I can't control? Mark took a step closer, the light from the kitchen softly illuminating his face, revealing just how earnest he was. You're not him. You're stronger than you realize. This is your moment to reclaim your narrative and write a new chapter. Remember, you control your emotions, they don't control you. Their words lingered in the air, filling the space with courage. The familiar flow of helplessness began to weaken as anger simmered, haunting and beautiful, demanding acknowledgement. I clutched the broom handle like a shield, fortified by the presence of my allies, and took a deep breath. For so long, I had felt trapped in that cycle of pain. It was time to shatter it. The air crackled with determination, thunder rumbling like a drumroll announcing the battle ahead. I want to face him, I said resolutely, the strength welling inside me surging through each fiber of my being. I want to take back my narrative. Let's do it, Jake agreed, his eyes alight with fierce support. But we need to be smart. We can't let him turn your strength against you. Well, stand together. Together. The word hung around us like a promise, tethering our resolve even tighter. Just then, another message pinged on my phone, but this time, it was different, an email notification. I dared not look away from my comrades, focusing on the goal ahead, but curiosity clawed at me to know. What if it was more than just Brian? What if it could give me the leverage I needed? I unlocked my phone, scanning the subject line. My breath caught, a feeling of dread welled within me. It's a notification from my therapist, I explained, the words catching in my throat. She sent me the notes from our last session. Jake leaned closer, concern etched on his brow. You have to trust yourself and remember why you are where you are now. Gathering my courage, I opened the email and began reading the notes. Lines leapt out at me. You are worthy. Do not allow others to dictate your narrative. Each word wrapped around me like a heartfelt embrace, igniting the warmth of resolve that had begun to build in my heart. There it is, Mark murmured, watching me attentively as the doubts that had tricked me into silence began to dissolve. You're not meant to be defined by Brian or anyone else. You have the tools you need to break free. Jake glanced toward the darkness looming outside, his determination charging the atmosphere. Let's stand up to him. Then, before I could respond, the door suddenly creaked under the pressure of the wind, screeching as if the universe itself warned us of the impending confrontation. My heart raced. Feeling the weight of 3 souls gathered in that moment, I knew I couldn't back down now. Let's get on the same page about how we handle this, I said, steeling myself. I want to confront him in a way that claims power back for me. Their acceptance felt like a shield around me. I could feel the resolve we shared radiating through the kitchen. I'll be by your side, no matter what, Mark assured me, his voice unwavering. This is our fight, and we will prevail, Jake added firmly, locking eyes with me. But we have to be ready for him to respond. He might swing harder this time. Stay alert. A moment of silence hung heavily amongst us, the anticipation thickening the air, as if the very fabric of our determination shifted gears into battle readiness. It felt exhilarating and terrifying, like standing on the edge, prepared to leap into a storm of fury. I am ready, I declared earnestly, my voice echoing the defiance rising within. I'll face my fear, and in doing so, I'll reclaim what was lost. As I embraced the elemental energy coursing through each of us, thunder cracked loudly outside, a reminder of the chaos brewing beyond the door. I took one last breath, committing to the fight ahead. My heart was a thunderous drum, ringing in the dawn of change. Together, I vowed, locking eyes with both men, feeling their fierce commitment rallying behind me. We're stronger together. And just like that, ready to face the storm that had once threatened to tear me apart, I stepped forward toward the door, toward whatever lay ahead. The winds howled in response, but I walked on, not backward to the past, but boldly into a future I would create. And as I crossed that threshold, I realized I wasn't just stepping into a battle with Brian, I was stepping into freedom. Sometimes, in the depths of our struggles, we find our greatest strength. And with a heart ignited by resilience, I knew I would fight with every part of me to seize what was rightfully mine. Whatever happens, I whispered to Jake and Mark as we stood together beneath the stormy skies, I won't let my past define me. The rain began to pour in torrents outside as I pushed the door open, and in that moment, I felt the transformative power of reclaiming my story. I was no longer trapped in the ashes of my past, I was rising from them, reborn into a version of myself that was unapologetically strong, and with the sound of thunder rumbling in the distance, I took that first decisive step into the storm.